Thanks for joining us for another week of Take Two. The prodigal Jim Dabakis is back from the campaign trail, and Greg Hughes is sitting beside him. And somehow they've missed each other so much that they're dressing the same now.
There was no memo. This is just, where he's coming over. He's decided he's had it with those people out there.
That's right.
He's coming over to the right. He's got to get registered as a Republican. It's all set. It's all set.
Let's talk about that. So the mayoral campaign did not go probably as you had liked and hoped. So what happens?
That's kind of rude how she said that.
I know.
How she said that?
I was trying to think of a nice way to say
this. Yeah.
But I'm happy to have you and have you concentrate more time on Take Two. What are your other plans for the future?
Well, look, the voters spoke, and it killed me when they gave me the results, and it was really close, kind of. And I said,
it was very close.
We're not going to make up that many. I'm not going through this thing. I hate politicians that don't say, you know what? I can't make up this many votes with a number of out. I'm out, and that's it. And people spoke, and I'm happy to live with them. So what am I going to do? I'm going to spend some time in Mexico teaching at a university there.
That terrifies me.
They wanted to know all about Trump and what about America.
And you're going to teach them.
People. This is disinformation. This is not right.
They're asking me about the electoral college.
This is collusion. So
I had to get Google out.
This is going to be collusion.
What that is. So
all right, but you just spent some time in Mexico, so you relaxed.
Ready to go.
Had some margaritas.
Next year I'll be living in China for 2 months and in Mumbai. I'm headed to Argentina for 1.5 to 2 months, and I'm going to have a great life is what I'm going to do.
I was going to say, this sounds like a lot better life than
city
politics.
council meetings.
Yeah.
Can I just point out that whatever people decide to do in their future, I just don't see a safety net or a consolation prize anywhere close to what Jim is describing
the
here.
awesome things you're going to do.
It's a little bit.
All right. Well, I'm excited for you to live La Vida Loca. I'll be interested to hear how your lessons go down there. It's a university you're going to be teaching at?
Yeah, it's a state university.
All right.
So, but it's going to be. They wanted me to teach like regular semesters, but I don't know how to give exams.
You don't know how to commit
So it's going to be 2-week kind of intensive. Okay, this is the American political system. So
awesome.
I'll invite you guys down.
I think Jim's phone's
Let's
ringing.
do it. Maybe we could do Take Two podcasts down there I'm sure they would love it.
I want to keep doing the podcast wherever we are.
So who's the bean counters? We got to get the budget ready for us to do some on location.
Okay.
Take Two.
I'll talk and see what we can arrange and see if we can go south of the border.
Delta, you listening?
That's
right. All right.
We'll
Awesome. Well, I am glad you are back. There's always a chance if you want to run for governor, you could do that. We had Jeff Birmingham get into the race this week, and he has 200.
Who?
I know, right? He's a Utah County businessman, and he has $200,000 more than Lieutenant Governor Cox. So he's got a lot of money. He's got to work on the name recognition. Speaking of the gubernatorial race, do you have anything you want to tell us or no?
No, other than it looks like an exciting race. It looks like I've heard some rumored names. I hear former Governor John Huntsman Jr.'s name is continued to be spoken about, and his entry into this race for governor in an open seat would make it a tough race, but an exciting one. Also, Spence Eccles Jr., that is a name that is emerging in real time. That would make it, I think that Utah deserves a deep pool and a robust debate and campaign. Sure. And so I think that that's good for the state. We don't see open seats very often, so I say come one, come all, whoever that may be.
Awesome.
But look, Jeff Birmingham announced this week, and I think that he is well funded. I think one of the highest percentage or formulas for success nationally to run for governor is a self-funded business person. And so I think anyone that would look past him would make a mistake to do so. I think that there's been a lot of work up until this point, and the announcement is here, and I think you'll see a lot coming out of that campaign. And again, back to the original point, I think that's a good thing.
That's right. I know there's a lot of listening tours going on too, so we will see how that
goes. It'll be fun
to
see. I mean, it seems to me that it's Cox's biggest nightmare to have Huntsman in, because they're the progressive end, if there's such a thing, of the Utah Republican Party, and as they're battling that way, it's going to leave it open for the guys more on the right, I suspect, and it should be a Donnybrook. Unfortunately, there is no Democrat. I mean, I'm not even hearing rumors about anybody that might run.
I know a Democrat who's got some free time on his hands right now.
What I think is going to happen, a bunch of us Democrats are going to change our registration and we're all going to en bloc decide who we're going to vote for at the last minute, and there's nothing the Republicans
Vote
can
in the
do
primaries?
about it. Yeah.
You could do it. I think you should register as a Republican. I
Will
think
you
it would
send
be
me a
exciting.
picture of that registration card? I want that if and when that were to happen.
Look, we Democrats have no power over the governorship because we don't even have a candidate. Last time we had a great candidate with millions and millions of dollars, he got the same 30%. So it may be the time the Republicans rip up their Democrat card. Who cares? And we, en masse, make a pledge. We're going in, and as a bloc, we're going to vote as Democrats, and we will have a say about who's going to be the next governor. Otherwise, we end up with another loser like Gary Herbert for 10 years.
Do you really feel that strongly about him?
Gary Herbert has been there 10 years. What is his legacy going to be? Nothing has happened on education. I mean, we're still 50th. Give me some environmental stuff that he's actually done. Take a look at our public lands and see what's happened there. Yeah, we've had a good economy, but so has the rest of the country had a good Obama economy. 10 years sitting in the chair, and it's like, what has been accomplished other than to forever change the system of government in the state to pay for play? What Gary Herbert has done in raising money and in making a connection between money and policy and having all these phony conferences and having people pay up, that will be the lasting dark legacy of Gary Herbert, because you can't point out anything that he's done well.
Jim came back and he has no opinions. Would you like to agree with him, or do you think that Governor Herbert has done a good job?
Look, there's this healthy tension between the executive branch and the legislative branch.
Yeah.
And I hail from the legislative branch. Only Jim Dabakis could describe this governor in a way where I have to defend this man. Okay, it wasn't even like my day job in the legislature to do it.
He does have high popularity.
But I have to tell you this about this governor and our state. We have seen incredible growth, economic growth. We have a challenge with population. We have large families. 75% of our growth in the state of Utah comes from within. But that's the way it's always been. This isn't a new phenomenon for our state. This was happening, I would argue, before statehood in terms of the growth of the state. How do you manage that? These things don't happen by themselves in terms of how you manage a growing population with its infrastructure challenges, with its education challenges. I am not unsatisfied. In fact, I'm relieved at where Utah sits today, and I don't think that comes without strong leadership. However, I will say that as we move forward, it's getting a little closer in here. It's getting a little more crowded, isn't it?
It is.
The infrastructure challenge, the challenge of growth. My daughter that's a junior at UVU, I want her to find a job, to be able to stay here, to have a family, to be close by with me. If we don't get our arms around the infrastructure challenges of the state, water, roads, even our workforce, being able to see that people can stay here, we're not just going to go into mediocrity, we're going to go into a decline. And so that kind of leadership, I think, will be maybe a new era, something a little bit harder than what we have seen up till now.
Yeah, infrastructure is a real issue. I know just in the Salt Lake County area, looking at Bangerter, that should have probably built wider in the first place when it was done. There's a lot of vision that needs to go on. So we're going to talk about that more in the future. The governor, though, has called a special session on your favorite topic, medical marijuana. This one, though, I've seen a lot of people upset that this is happening. They're thinking that the legislature is going to tear it further away from what the people voted on. My understanding is this session might actually bring it closer to what people actually voted on the actual ballot.
So there was, we sought common ground. I think we arrived at that, but we always understood that in something as transformational or something that has never been done before, states taking on medical cannabis, it is against the Controlled Substance Act, all of it. If someone says that there's a part that's not, let's just be honest, let's be intellectually honest. Not only is medical cannabis breaking the federal law, but certainly in Colorado and Nevada and California where recreational marijuana is legal, that I would argue is even a greater, more flagrant violation of federal law. And we have tried to do our level best to find ways to protect public safety while providing access. But we knew when we did this, as you get into this, as long as we were doing it together with a commitment to provide that access in a safe way, there would be lessons learned. And if we are working together, and I think that's an example of what's happening here, you can come together in a special session and find and overcome the hurdles that might be there that you didn't see when you were bringing this compromise together. But the spirit of finding common ground still exists, and I think that Utahns should take note and find that to be a good thing.
And my understanding is the state was going to have these dispensaries where everything went out from, and I think it's going to be more private now. Is that a good thing
Jim,
for you,
this isn't a comedy section.
Did you have
Don't
any-
laugh.
Did you
That
have
was
chewables
true.
before you
I
showed
just
up
poured
today?
my heart out in
The
that.
people went and voted. And the
Yes.
government and the governor and the legislature, they hated it. They don't want medical marijuana. They hate it. And they were contemptuous.
No.
And they got together and had a compromise among the people that hated it all along. And they came up with a compromise. And suddenly, a year and a half later, they discover, oh my gosh, this is against federal law. We better have another compromise and bring it all together. What the hell? Why weren't they listening to us way back when? And instead of being down the road a year and a half, suddenly they figured all this out. These people were against it from day one. They've stayed against it. They're against it now.
say I
They
missed
have
Jim?
roadblock after
When did I
roadblock
say
after
that?
roadblock. It's going to be years, I predict,
No.
before one patient is helped while they're off. Blah 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 blah. This is a bad system, and it shows just how contemptuous our elected representative are toward the will of the people. That didn't say, "Oh, do something about it." They said, "Pass this bill."
Okay,
And
so
I
let's
gotta
talk
tell
about
you,
some of
it's
the
awful.
issues that are coming up. This week in the news, there was a mom who had her children taken away from her for reasons of, I think, some problems in the marriage. She has her children back. She's taking CBD oil, as I understand it, because she has pain. But in her blood test, it's showing up that there's slight amounts of THC, which is against the law. We've talked about the fact that federally that's not something that's okay. The judge is trying to go by the rule book and say, I'm sorry, we're taking your kids away. But there's an argument now, and they're going to hopefully try to work this out in the legislature where they're like, okay, there's got to be some spirit to the law. What do we do? Because this is a mess. I mean,
So we contemplated when we worked on this, when I was in the legislature, that we did not want people, the unintended consequences as we create this structure, people fall out of compliance. And so there was language in the bill to try and remedy that. Clearly with this judge's decision, there needs to be even in greater attention and work put towards that. That's an unintended consequence. I just want to say this. It wasn't just people that didn't like medical cannabis that got together. You had the people that authored the very referendum that were part of the group that came together, and that was a transparent process that before the election even took place at the beginning of October said, there is common ground here. Many people that I heard voted for Prop 2 to make sure that the agreed upon compromise would pass. I remember being speaking with Jim, my friend, and we were talking about how should you vote? Should you vote against it because you have the compromise, or should you vote for it because you found this common ground? And it was Jim's position that if you wanted to hold the legislature's feet to the fire with the agreement, you should vote for that referendum. So what I'm saying is you can't glean the intent of every voter when you've been transparent to show that there's common ground between both sides having been found. What we have is what we said we would have. We would bring together the sides so that not one side would be acting in a disingenuous way, contrary to what Jim believes. I think you have a collaborative process now that you would not have had if there had just been a bill without any kind of that conversation ahead of time.
are you being disingenuous, Jim?
The governor and legislative Republican leaderships, and frankly some Democrats, they gamed the system. They were against it. They fought it. They had years to come up with their own plan. Finally, when it became clear that it was going to get on the ballot and was going to pass, they sat down with a compromise. And the compromise was, if it passes, we decide. If it doesn't pass, we decide. Baloney. It's all this time later. Can you give me the name of one doctor, Greg, that right now, if you're suffering, you can go get a prescription now while the legislature has set up this crazy Rube Goldberg thing?
I see, and other major healthcare providers have said, and they're not called prescriptions, they're recommendations, but they have said you can recommend. And I think that is...
Give me the name of a doctor who's making recommendations.
We even had them testifying in committee. There were doctors that came and testified. So I imagine, I don't know, I haven't seen their recommendations as they've been made, but given that we saw the interest of physicians in our state to do it, and given that other states who have that same requirement as Pennsylvania does have engaged in that.
Well, it's a secret.
So.
And then what if they do give that and somebody's walking down the street and is caught with it in their blood? I mean, the legislature may have found a way to drag this out and fumble it more and be less transparent, but I don't know how they would have.
It's legal, though, to have it in your system and have it on you if it's only the amount you'd have.
There's a dosable amount, and you'd have to have a doctor's recommendation.
Let's try it. I
Today,
want you to
right
go to
now,
the doctor
today.
between now and next
We're
week.
going to make Jim the guinea pig.
Give me the
do
name
this.
of a doctor.
Okay.
Well,
Somebody
anyone in the
text
IHC
me the name
system,
of a doctor.
Anyone in the IHC system can.
But
So
they're
that's-
not doing it.
I know, so
Even
that's
though
why we
their
try.
company says they can, they don't feel protected.
So what kind of medical problem do you have? Do you think you could get it for?
Mental.
He said it, I didn't. But I suspected
I'm
all
just saying,
along.
all right, if anyone is listening to us and you have a doctor where you have a bona fide problem where you're saying, I would like this, and you've either been given the recommendation for it or said, sorry, you're going to have opioids instead, let us know, because I really would like to know.
I would too.
I personally go to a doctor that prescribes herbs, and I haven't asked for it yet. I should have. I was just at my yearly physical, and I should have just asked to see if that was one of my options, and I didn't even think of it. So now I'm feeling very disappointed in myself. All
I am
right.
too. I think, and if you do, I think one of the dosages should be right before the show.
Right before the show.
We want to see how
All right,
that-
see
how
how that
that
plays
rolls
out on
out.
TV.
Yeah.
I think you're still not supposed
I'll
to be
try
using
it.
that at work or while you're
I
driving.
think, yeah.
There's
If I
rules.
meet one of those medical things, I don't know that I do, but if I did, I would try it on the podcast and see how it affects me, because I've only tried it that once and it didn't work nothing really happened.
That made a little news. That was fun.
That was fun. You didn't feel like relaxed or happy or
Dude,
pain-free
nothing
or
really,
I don't know.
I think I didn't take enough.
I found him eating Cheetos out of the bag. He couldn't get enough of them. It was really weird.
How many gummies did you eat?
Just one.
I don't know if that's enough. I've never done like marijuana.
Apparently
gummies
it's
to
not.
know.
For a fat guy like me, it's apparently not. But
Okay.
All right.
I don't
Okay.
think you're fat. I actually
All
think
right.
you're coming back here looking very sleek.
Thank you.
All right. It's a podcast. People can't see, but you can imagine Jim looking all sleek in his suit right now. Greg's looking pretty fancy too.
Thank
All
you.
right. Let's
You as
talk
well.
about, this is one of Jim's issues he brought in today. I didn't even know this was happening, but apparently 10 states, including the state of Utah, are now backing a gun maker in an appeal case with Sandy Hook Elementary, where all of those kids in the elementary were killed. The idea here is that the lawsuit's trying to hold the gun maker responsible for the shooting of these children. Should gun makers be held responsible?
Yes. Give me a reason why we should have those assault weapons that were conceived and are good for one thing, and that is killing the enemy on the battlefield. Give me a reason why the whole machinery of the industrial complex that makes millions and millions of dollars off of that shouldn't be held responsible. Just like those guys that are selling the opioids, corporations have responsibilities for the products they sell, whether it's vaping or whether it is tobacco. If you're selling a machine whose purpose is to kill people and send off explosions inside of children in an elementary school, yes, you should have some responsibility. And there, with Mississippi and Alabama and Tennessee, is Sean Reyes proudly, for all the political life there is, standing against the parents at Sandy Hook and for the people that create those vicious machines of war. Of course, Utah should not be part of that, and it's part of a long pattern Sean Reyes has had to jump into lawsuits and waste Utah taxpayers' money. No, he should not be allowed to do that.
So I had not heard until Jim showed me this article that they are working. So the NRA in these 10 states are trying to help makers Remington, right, of this weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a good idea? Does
No. Look, Jim just explained why he's for that. He hates guns and he wants to have them confiscated,
Assault
banned, made
weapons.
eliminated. And it's a nice end run to try and get to that. If you can get to the manufacturer who makes them, it's a great strategy politically, but it's not one you could ever carry forward. If you drove in a truck or car to rob a bank or commit a crime or commit harm, would Chevy be would be liable for that? Would the car maker be? What about the internet? If the Democrats believe that there was all this manipulation on Facebook and everything else, so is Facebook guilty of treason? Because it was the very vehicle that they used to manipulate the public, which I don't believe is the case as they do. But again, if someone's accessing something on the internet that they shouldn't be, or that would create harm, are you going after the internet providers? Of course you are not. This isn't a strategy that you could carry across the crimes and the things that we don't want to see happen in this country. You can't lay it at the feet of car manufacturers internet providers, even gun makers. There's no
any
correlation to
Mitt
that.
is there now with the entire Utah delegation going, let's ban those vapes. They're bad. Their products are bad. Nope, we're doing it away with it. You stand with the vape companies that they shouldn't be banned
question.
and they shouldn't?
Look, you've
there
got
are
an emerging
times
market.
where your product is so bad where it has no socially redeeming value whatsoever, like assault weapons that are used in elementary school shootings where 22 little 5, 6, 7-year-olds were mowed down, where you say, you know what? No, you can't have it.
Jim,
you can't build them anymore.
No one would argue about what happened there and our resoluteness to not ever see that happen again.
Then stop
but I am
making
telling you,
AK-47s.
if you thought that stopping the manufacturing of and the selling of those weapons would eliminate these crimes that you're describing, you might have a case. But let me tell you, there are 300 million guns in this country. Let's say that you go to D.C. and you guys write a flowery bill that says, no more, we don't let any more be made, we want to buy back, we're going to take them all back, we're going to confiscate them. Do you honestly think the 300 million guns in this country disappear? And if they don't, what kind of government would you like to see that goes and finds those weapons?
I'm not saying 300
and takes
million.
them
How
away?
many AK-47s
It won't-
are out there?
To the very case you're making about the horrific crimes that people have committed, what you're talking about doing, going after manufacturers or all these things, it will not have the measurable
Let's try it.
prevention
Would
that
you
you're
support a
talking
lawsuit?
about.
So here's
It
a
won't.
question. If the lawsuit were different and let's say an AK-47 was not used at Sandy Hook or wherever the lawsuit was going on and somebody brought in, let's say, multiple handguns, would you support a lawsuit still, or would it be different because they weren't weapons
Oh, it's
of war?
different. I mean, there's some logical reason on allowing people to have handguns and sporting weapons and the other. There's no reason those assault weapons ought to be available at a whim. Australia had this problem, and you know what?
the size of
they
Texas,
did away with
Australia.
it.
I mean, it's not
Exactly,
300
it's the
million people.
size of Texas, and they did away with it. What is your solution, Greg? What are you guys going to do? You just can't wait till we see it happen in Utah. And there's an assault weapon, and it's our
Greg,
kids.
I'm glad you asked. Here's the answer. If someone drives drunk, we don't sue Jack Daniels for that person driving drunk. However, if the person was at the bar and they were overserved,
You could go after the
you could go
server.
after them.
Yeah.
If there are liability laws where the way people get their guns, that person commits a crime and there was not a thorough check, or there wasn't, we have these on the book. If something was done in a way where people had these weapons or these guns and then a crime was committed, you can go back and look at how they've got those. And I think there can be liability for that. And I think with the technology today, if I had a gun, we talk about the gun show loophole. Some of that is logistics, but I think we're going to get to a place with technology where I wouldn't want to sell my gun. If I knew that if I sold my gun to a stranger, if I had one and I wanted to sell it, that if they committed a crime with that, there would be a liability on me if I did not go through a certain process. There will be, in the years to come, the desire for the buyer and the seller to clear themselves of legal liability, to go through that process, even through technology, to make sure that those bill of sales have gone through that scrutiny. You're going to do that. Will it stop it entirely? No, because you have criminals that have never considered any of these legal ways of getting guns that will continue to be criminals. That will always happen, but for the law-abiding citizens, who are the far majority of those that own guns, law-abiding citizens, we will find greater and greater ways to make sure that we are buying them and we are protecting ourselves from legal liability in the event of a crime being occurred with a handgun.
Which
or a
reminds
weapon.
me of something that happened in the news this week. Lauren McCluskey, the student who was shot and killed by her once boyfriend, estranged boyfriend at the University of Utah, the person who loaned the gun to the shooter is now on probation for 3 years. A judge deciding to hold them accountable for giving that right they had, where they'd been approved to have this gun, and giving it to someone else.
I think things like that ought to be paid attention to, and there ought to be accountability.
Does that help?
Being,
Jim's rolling his eyes.
Okay,
He just likes
I could just
banning.
get going. Ban assault weapons, period. Go after the manufacturers, have buybacks, get them off the streets, save the children, and keep the other 599 million guns. But assault weapons, give me a break.
Okay, we've been over vapes this week, and I actually told you we weren't going to talk about it, but since you brought it up, obviously this is an issue where people want gun control. Even here in Utah, a new UtahPolicy.com poll shows that 56% say the federal government should ban all assault-style weapons, 32% oppose a ban, 59% also want Congress to ban high-capacity magazines, just 30% disagree. So people are looking for change there, but Congress isn't taking it up. But Congress is all of a sudden taking up vaping. Should we be getting rid of vaping, or should we just concentrate on guns right now?
Vaping, especially with strawberry and candy cane, and just seems creepy to me. I just
I know, but Utah kids love them.
Oh, I know.
I'm so
but
confused. This is what I don't understand, because I'm not disagreeing with what Jim just said, amazingly, but I can't keep track of left of center lobbying for recreational marijuana that will have all kinds of flavors to them, that will have dispensaries that have every kind of cotton candy or flavor that you'd want under the sun, at the same time losing sleep or getting angry about vaping that could taste like candy. Can we just be consistent? I don't know how we legalize marijuana over here. We ban super big gulp or 44-ounce drinks
Those
over
are
on
bad
this
for
side.
you.
How we get mad about vaping, but we're good about something. Just pick a path, man. I'm just saying, look, and as far as vaping goes, secondhand smoke has been said to cause cancer. It's to cause lung cancer. If we can find a way in an emerging market with vaping, I'm not promoting vaping per se, but I cannot keep track of where water vapor is eliminating the carcinogens and the smoke and the secondhand smoke, that this is the worst thing that's ever happened. When I think if you could find a safe way for that to be done instead of smoking, net, we're going to have a healthier society for it. But I think the emphasis would be what is really safe. It's so new, this vaping industry, that I think that we don't have, or possibly could not have, the safeguards around it. So we got to do something there, but let's not just lose our minds over this when we're fighting for medical cannabis, recreational cannabis, other things. It
We've
just
got bigger
seems a
fish
bit
to fry.
distorted.
what about secondhand gummy bears? You don't hear a lot about that.
They're
There's
all
a piece
dangerous.
laying there. You didn't know where it came from.
And
You
know,
popped it.
I mean, I was reading a little when I was away in Mexico.
All right,
Just-
you got to tell a quick story because I'm told
okay,
we're almost
it'll-
out of
all right,
time.
it'll be quick. And Thoreau came up. And Thoreau said, consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
I have heard this
So
from-
that's all I'm saying. All right, you're right. There's no consistency to it, but
Just because Thoreau said it doesn't make it true. I think
All right,
consistency is actually a nice quality. I do.
especially in the law, right?
It is lovely.
Yeah,
All right.
Let's evenly practice.
Treat
it,
yourselves
apply it,
nice. Go get yourself a candy cigarette. They had back in the 80s. Do they sell those anymore?
Probably not
It'd
in
be-
Utah.
No, probably not.
Liquor
Online.
stores only.
Straight sugar is not good for you either.
We have truly missed Jim.
I
This
know,
is not- this has
seriously.
been
I feel
just
like I
hair
need to
on
drink
fire
some
stuff.
caffeine before Jim comes here because I'm like, whoa, I feel like I'm dragging compared to you. So I'll have what you're having. We're glad you're
So
back.
good to be here.
Yes.
And we would like to thank everyone
Welcome
who filled
back.
in for Jim while he was gone.
Yes.
So thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for being back, and have a great weekend, everyone. We will be back to debate with more caffeine next Friday.